Hello and welcome to IBTimes UK. I'm joined by Natalie Bennett, the leader of the Green Party of England and Wales. Hello Natalie, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
Now one of the things that you do share with someone like the Conservatives is that you've promised a referendum on Europe. Why is that?
Yeah, well, first of all, we believe in democracy. We trust the voters. We wouldn't necessarily have put that on the table, but now that it's on the table, we say it's true that you have to be in your late 50s to have voted directly on Europe before. We're very comfortable with that. But we would be campaigning in that referendum to stay in Europe because, first of all, it's not that long since Armistice Day. It's worth reflecting on the fact that, Europe has delivered, peace over decades in an area where that hasn't historically been the case. But also there's just basically decisions that need to be made at the right sort of level, the European level. We should and can work together, and we should very much celebrate the free movement of people in the EU, which works both ways. The number of continental Europeans here is roughly equal to the number of British people on the continent. And that gives people many more choices, many opportunities in their life that they wouldn't have otherwise. But the third thing I'd say in terms of the referendum is that what we actually need is we need a very much reformed Europe. And in use of that word, I'm going to agree with David Cameron. But what I mean by reform is 180 degrees opposite to what he means by reform. And so that means that we think that Europe should work not for big multinational corporations, as it does far too much already, but for communities. Communities should be able to keep a say over their own decision making. We need to principle of subsidiarity that's written into the Lisbon Treaty, but it's not really been anything like sufficiently implemented. We need to stop focusing decisions on Brussels and allow them out into the communities. And the other thing is worth saying on Europe is where the Green Party is the only party strongly opposed to the whole TTIP, the proposed EU-US free trade deal, which is a real threat to democracy and a threat to our standards of environmental standards, workers' rights standards, food standards. All of those things are seriously threatened by TTIP.
You've said Greens are opposed to TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, but there are plenty of other issues that are problematic for the Greens being pro-Europe, such as your plans to renationalise the railways, which is illegal under European law. Surely the whole basis of the European Union, its free markets and emphasis on austerity, is just at odds with Green policy.
Indeed it is, but it's not the structures of Europe that are at odds, it's the kind of politics we've got there. So the answer is to elect different politicians to Europe, to make Europe more democratic in itself. The Parliament should have much more of a say. So it's a case of, it's right to make some decisions at that level. I often point to the European Bathing Water Directive, which I spent a lot of time a few months ago debating with lots of Tories. But what we're talking about, first of all, and apologies to anyone who's eating breakfast, we're talking about setting a standard for the level of fecal bacteria in the water. And that's a standard that applies right across Europe. And that makes sense because, if we dump stuff on one side of the English Channel, quite a bit of it will end up on the other side. Same for the French the other way. That's true across Europe. So it makes sense to have standards and say these are the standards we're going to apply.
Now, one of the reasons that people say that we should be out of Europe would be the ability to control our own borders, to cap migration, as it were. Do you think that immigration is a problem?
I think we have a huge number of problems that people identify with immigration. And when I talk to people and they say, "Oh, I'm concerned about immigration," and I say, "What does that mean? What is it?" There's three things that they most commonly respond. One is low wages. One is housing, problems with housing. My children can't get a council house. And the third one is crowded schools and hospitals. All of those things are enormous problems, and none of them are caused by immigration. They're caused by failed government policies. The low wages are caused by a low, inadequate minimum wage, inadequately enforced. The housing problems, we've got a whole host of bad policies there, but right to buy is just one of them. And crowded schools and hospitals, inadequate investment, and this government's total reorganisation of the NHS, what it promised not to do, that it then did, PFI schemes that are costing a fortune, and a simple failure to put the money needed into the NHS. So, and it's worth looking at the whole issue of the immigration cap. And many people don't realise this is a net figure. So one half of that you have absolutely no control over, what shouldn't have any control over whatsoever, which is how many people decide to leave each year for a whole host of reasons. And then if you look at the incoming net, the total figure is about 260,000. About 80,000 of those are actually Britons coming back to live in the UK, having been living overseas. We do live in a mobile world, that's the reality. It's a great thing for many people, and we think we should respect the rights of people who should be able to be here. That means refugees, first of all, which we're not properly respecting our responsibilities, family members of people who already live here, and the people who should have a right to be here should be able to be here, and currently we're not doing that. And, one example that's probably most likely to affect anyone who's watching this is some deeply unfair and unreasonable rules about British people who want to bring a foreign spouse or partner to Britain. That the Britain has to be earning £18,600 a year, which excludes about 2/3 of women to start off with, and yet actually what you've got is, on the government's own figures, 19,000 Britons who can't live in their own country with their spouse or partner.